Rosamund Pike, it's a pleasure having you here in Beijing with us. And actually, we had quite an intense time over the last couple of weeks. We have been ice skating together.
We have. My first time on the ice, my first time in Beijing.
You see, this, memories. This.
I tell you, we're making memories. Yeah, we are.
Absolutely. You have been in China and in Hong Kong. You're staying for a couple of more days. What is the passion and what do you think about this immense and beautiful and interesting country?
It's just the fact that it's so unknown to me at the moment. It's exciting. I love being in a place where I don't understand what's going on and I'm having to read body language, read clues, try to get a sense of what the ways and mores of a place are. I'm exposed to Mandarin at home, you see, because my other half is bringing up our children speaking Mandarin. So it's a language that I'm hearing around me all the time, and then to come to the country is very exciting.
That's quite an unusual situation.
It's
have
completely...
a 5-year-old child speaking Mandarin.
Yes, it's insanely bizarre, and I look on in wonder. It's a deeply satisfying thing to observe, and kind of for its insanity of being an English family who have 2 Chinese-speaking children, who until, thanks to you, had never been to China.
We are in an unbelievably nice setting here, a culture of hundreds of thousands of years, which you would like to discover. It's
so beautiful, this place. We're in the Summer Palace just outside Beijing. The air is filled with cotton coming off the trees. It's like it's snowing, but it's cotton falling. There's a smell in the air of incense and wood. It's a very romantic and mysterious place, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and obviously we're here for the Beijing Film Festival, and you've met one of your colleagues here with Zhu Xun, and you have been watching a couple of movies lately, Chinese movies, which are quite different from Western style, typical Hollywood style movies. What do you think? What is the inspiration for you on that?
I just want to immerse myself in films by filmmakers I don't know, by actors and actresses I don't know, I'm not familiar with. So I'm really enjoying the way that they explore subjects in a different way to how they do in Hollywood. There was a movie about a woman who's not yet married, but instead of in Hollywood, it would all be about her and her friends and, her frustrations with men. But in this film, in the Chinese film, it was very much about this battle between her as an individual and wanting to please her parents as a 30-year-old woman. And this relationship, this strong bond between parents and children is something that comes across so clearly and strongly and interestingly in all these Chinese movies. And I think, in a way, it makes me realize we've lost that in the Western movies. We've lost such a sort of deep, poignant exploration of parents and children. I'm thinking I need to bring it back.
Yeah, because we see many Chinese stars being part of American productions.
We do.
But shouldn't we see Western stars in Chinese productions for such a huge market?
Yeah, it would be really interesting, but of course we've been experienced for so long of having people who don't speak English particularly fluently appear in our films, but I believe in the Chinese films that I've been watching, there have been no Westerners appear. So perhaps they're not as used to hearing Mandarin spoken by people with a strong accent or
which would be amazing.
Which would be exciting, wouldn't it? I've just done this film that's a love story between an African man and an English girl in the 1940s, and this sort of mixed-race love story just brought up so much. It brought up so many resonances, and it was such an exciting thing to explore, cultural differences and just a love that is so powerful it can't be ignored. Maybe there could be a love story like that.
Talking about your career, we obviously know that you started your career as Miranda Frost, as a Bond girl. Tell us how you got that role, what are your memories on that huge production?
Well, I came back. When I got that role, I was a sort of messy, scruffy, hitchhiking student traveller, and they asked me to go in for a Bond audition. I I couldn't have been less like a Bond girl at the point I went in. And I went into this room, and there were, there was a room full of girls, all dressed, in sleek pantsuits, and I was in a kind of woolly cardigan, and I thought, oh dear, I'm in completely the wrong place. So the only thing you can do then is put it on. You think, okay, I don't look the part, but I'll have to act the part. So I just said, sure, I can be a sexy bitch, underneath all the wool and shaggy hair. And then one thing went to another, and suddenly I was being asked to go to Pinewood to have a screen test. I'd never done anything like this before. I was picked up in a Jaguar. There were flowers in a dressing room. It was like I'd won a competition to be a Bond girl for a day. And you're on the Bond set. You're on with the cinematographer. You're with the director. You're with the producers. And they said to me, bring something you'd like to wear. There's always an evening scene in the Bond film. Bring a beautiful evening dress. And I was like, oh, I have just the thing. And my mother was an opera singer, right? So she has a wardrobe full of incredibly, what I thought were beautiful concert dresses, right? Big roses, big sleeves, big skirts. So I went round to her house the night before, selected one of these dresses, and then thought maybe the roses were a bit too much. So I was unpicking all the roses. And I arrived the next day very proud of this dress and this enormous bag, because it was such a huge dress. And they looked at it and they said, well, that is a very, very beautiful dress. But the women in our film wear things that look more like this. And they held up 3 pieces of string. And I thought, right. So, and that was my induction and transformation into a Bond woman, realizing I had to get rid of all the baggage and just go for the sleek and sexy.
Is it at that time where you started to do your crazy stuff, fencing, a little bit of martial arts? Now I've heard that you're walking on wings of planes. You look like a very rational type of person, but inside of you, there's another person.
I have to do that. You see, I have to keep an appearance up. Otherwise, everything would be,
So
you have to hide on the inside. The true Rosamund is probably the person who kind of kicks off the disguise at the end of the Gone Girl press conference, 8 months pregnant, finish the 3 days of press in New York, get up at 6 a.m. and go to a downtown rave in a mask by myself, 8 months pregnant, and dance for 2 hours. That's probably who I really am, and not many people see that person. Or the person who, at a friend's 1920s birthday party, thought, yes, I'm going to get on the wing of this 1940s biplane and ride it into the skies.
How was it?
The biggest thrill, terrifying. You have to sign a piece of paper that, basically, but it's a feeling of you're airborne, you're in flight, you can experience weightlessness. The pilot said, I can take you right up, and if I go up high enough and come down at a steep enough angle, you'll be in free fall. And I thought, go for it, give it to me. And I got a costume. I know the plane was from the 40s, but the event was themed around the 1920s, so I'd gone to a theatrical costumier's and got myself this full 1920s flying outfit. I got a little kind of leather bomber skull cap and a leather jacket and these 1920s pants, which of course have kind of large, like jodhpurs, like big sides. So when you're up in the air, there's a lot of wind flappage. It's a very stupid design if you're outside a plane, probably useful if you're inside one. But no, it was a crazy, wonderful thing to do. It was. Did
you ever try parachute, free fall? Would you do this?
No, I'm not so interested in that, funnily enough. I like the feeling of being connected to a machine. I like being on a plane. I'd learned to fly.
You told me that you like cars.
We share a love of old cars. I don't think my car is quite as prestigious as yours, George, but I have just restored my 1972 Citroën DS, which was my first car. And I've brought her back to all her glory. She used to be owned by Monica Vitti.
Is it right?
In Rome. So she has an interesting history.
let's talk about Gone Girl. You just mentioned it, that you were partying after the press conference, and you played here a woman with many faces and facets. In playing Amy, which side of her was the most challenging to portray?
She's a challenging woman through and through because she's clever and she's scheming and she's one step ahead of everybody all the time. But the most interesting thing was to get to play a character who's so narcissistic, who gets, in a way that's her weakness because she got so caught up in the story she was telling, and then she fell in love with the image of herself that she'd created, the ultimate narcissist's downfall. She realized that the missing Amy Dunn was, there was this outpouring of love from around the world, and she was taken in by that. And you see the little girl who was never good enough for her parents, so her parents created a character who was sort of based on their daughter but was everything, was better in every way. Even you can see it's probably the parents' fault of who Amy became, but it was fun to play a woman in a big movie and not have to be nurturing, not have to be maternal, not have to be sweet, not have to be the good girl.
Yes, because there's another scene in the movie which is quite famous, which is your scene with Neil Patrick Harris, which is quite a also bloody scene.
It is, yes. Sex and death all mixed into one.
Yes.
Yeah. David Fincher loved this scene. I think it's so insane as a concept that this woman finally allows her child, the boy who was obsessed with her all through their teenage years, to sleep with her, and in the process she cuts his throat. So obviously
Charming.
This required quite a lot of technical precision. We had to rehearse it. We choreographed it because each time we did the scene, the room became a bloodbath. We're talking 450 gallons of blood, we're talking 25 changes of sheets. So every time we'd leave the set, the walls would go up.
But for our audience, this was ketchup, right? And not blood.
It was, David Fincher wanted pig's blood. We actually used you'll be pleased to know that no animals were injured during the shooting of this movie, and it was a substitute which provided the necessary drenching capacity. It stuck in the right way. I mean, it was disgusting. But the bed would go out covered in blood. We would go off to shower covered in blood, and then it would be like Groundhog Day. We'd arrive back pristine, made up, hair blow dried, pristine fret sheets, Savoy bed, all perfect again, and off we'd go.
Well, thank God now you're playing, or you have been...
Don't worry, anyone from the hotel, this is not how I normally operate. Your sheets will be fine.
But now you're playing in a love movie.
It's amazing anyone thought I could be lovable again after that. I finished filming it. We filmed in Botswana. It was a true story set in the 1940s between a British woman who met a man who was due to be chief of his tribe in what is now Botswana, then Bechuanaland. And she just upped and went. She just said yes to life in that minute. And I admire so much people who have that courage to, leave a life that's happy because they have a conviction, they have a sudden moment of absolute certainty that this is what they have to do. And so she left her life in London and she went to Africa, and the British government came down on them like a ton of bricks. They did not want this marriage to take place. They were getting into bed with South Africa. They wanted those alliances. They couldn't have this disruption to the status quo in the southern African countries. And so this very ordinary girl had to become a stateswoman. And my goodness, George, I can't tell you, I admire this woman so much. And eventually her and her husband led their country into independence. And when we were filming, we were able to meet their son, who is now the current president of Botswana. So that was a pretty exciting adventure. And to also, you know what it's like, you always try to do things in places where things haven't been done before. So we filmed in a place where they're not used to filming, and all the challenges that go with that. You book 300 extras, maybe some of them turn up, some of them think, no, I'm not going to come today.
So you really try as an actress to play all type of roles.
Yeah.
From sexy bitch in James Bond to a murderer to a lovable wife. So you want to try everything.
I do, and now I'm getting the freedom to do that because that's the gift that an Oscar nomination gives you. Is suddenly it's like a stamp. It's a seal of approval that means that films can get made with your participation, and it gives you freedom to find the stories you want to tell and bring them to the world. I mean, Gone Girl was a really important story because it was an adult movie that adults wanted to see in the theatre. They didn't want to wait for it to come out on DVD or to be able to stream it. They wanted to see it that first weekend in the theatre, and that's the holy grail.
Mm-hmm. To finish our interview, we're going to go through 10 questions. We'll have obviously a watch over there.
Okay.
So
ticking. Oh right, ticking watch. Yes.
Ticking
okay.
clock. IWC, obviously. So let's try to do this 10 questions in 60 seconds. Are you ready?
Yeah, ready, George.
Acting for me is?
A drug.
My favorite movie of all times is?
Apocalypse Now.
I would never leave my house without?
A plan.
Life is all about?
Taking chances, making choices.
My advice to young actors is?
Make good ones, take good ones. Chances and choices.
I would most like to meet?
I would most like to meet Amelia Earhart, Marie Colvin, Marina Abramovich.
Only women?
They are only women, yeah, at the moment.
No,
yes,
men.
for a conversation.
Okay.
Oh, maybe...
No, it's okay.
James
it's
Dean.
If I had not become an actress, I would have become?
A doctor.
The place I feel most comfortable in?
Water. The water, anywhere.
I can always spare 10 minutes for?
A cup of tea.
The most inspirational thing somebody has ever said to me is?
Was Judi Dench saying, when you leave the theatre, go home. Whether it's mentally or physically, but go home. It's really good advice for keeping your home and work life happy. You just mentally go home.
Rosamund Pike, it has been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Did we do it in 60 seconds? I don't know.
Don't worry about the clock.
I don't know. I always worry about the clock.
Don't worry.